Yes. That's right.
Oh, yeah, well, it's.
We used to joke at our elder meetings, like, sorry.
Ah.
I hit the floor, just let when it stops. Let somebody find a well.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Bruce is pretty well. He used to be president of the state convention of Baptist.
Bruce, okay. Well.
What's going on, sir? You doing all right?
Doing well. Yeah. How you doing?
Doing all right.
Yeah.
All right.
Good. You can ask me questions. Just gonna sit back here.
Record. What's going on? I'll see what happens.
Yeah, all right.
It goes on.
If it starts to get,
Yeah, right.
a little boring.
Yeah, right.
Oh, so how?
No, it's now, I'm now every 6 months, scans. But. Because I'm like, no, next thing I know, I'm in his car. 180 miles. I'm like, I'm trying to kill me to the hospital. But when it gets the gospel, right behind me. I've been there 5 years now. And then I said, you are 195 over the PA system. And my wife's going, what are you talking? I'm like, I'm playing John Mellencamp. I'm like, wow. But the doctor said, one on the side. Something like it hurts to die. But here I am. So she told me she wouldn't do the introduction and everything else. I'm just doing it.
Okay. So, when did you?
That's cool. That's cool.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming out. We're very excited to be here, and the Lieutenant Governor is looking forward to sharing different things with you. We're going to actually open up with Pastor Bruce, who has graciously allowed us to use his auditorium. He's going to open with a prayer, and then we will get into our conversation. And at some point, we'll have a question time, and when we do have questions, we'll just have you come up here, and then we'll hold the microphone so you can ask a question if you have a question. I think that Senator Alexander's actually going to join the Lieutenant Governor, and so they'll be able to discuss some things at the state level. So with that, Pastor Bruce, if you would please come up.
All right, well, thank you again for being here. We just hope that you have a great time tonight. This is a good time. Would you join me as we seek the Lord? Father, I thank you for the opportunity that we have to come in this place to set in the footsteps of democracy. We pray that tonight would be a night of gaining information, also of encouragement and a concern. We pray that you would guard our hearts and our tongues and our minds, that we would not say anything that would be offensive to one another or to our Lord. We pray for our governor, we pray for our lieutenant governor, Lord, that you would grant them great wisdom as they continue to try to lead the state, and that, Lord, you would bless this time. And for that, we be so thankful. I pray this in the name that's above all names, our Savior and our Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Lieutenant Governor, it's all yours.
Thank you, Pastor. Appreciate it. Yeah. Thanks for having us. Hey, give it up for Pastor Bruce here. For opening up this, thank you. Hey, well, thank you all for joining us. We're going to have just an open, honest dialogue tonight. And we want you to ask some questions before we get into that. I appreciate Senator Alexander joining tonight here. I wanted to kind of just maybe recap a little bit of the session. This was my first session. You've been, how many sessions have you been?
This is my third, and the biggest task we had was break in new governor.
You did a terrible job. So what I'm going to just maybe throw a couple things here. This is not scripted, right? We do unscripted, so I want to get the real answer from you. So, what were kind of some of the things that you saw this session between the House and the Senate as maybe some of the wins, and then maybe we'll go whether some of the things we can do better for next year. Just curious your thoughts.
Yeah, I think looking back on the session, Senate Bill 1 really took over and kind of set the tone for the session. There were really a lot of really good things that we got done this time, and they kind of were in the shadows of what was going on. But what we did see was the governor's office, Senate leadership, and House leadership coming together and working hard on the bills. We just didn't get, at least, I'm not satisfied with where we got to, certainly on property tax issues. I'm not sure that before, but on healthcare, I mean, we put together a package of healthcare bills that I think is going to help leaders. On parental rights, we just signed the governor's office had a ceremonial signing of Senate Bill 143. On the foster side, we have another good bill come out of Judge Sherry, bill that's on down there that will help with the foster families. Yeah, so I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that, like I said, kind of took a shadow to the rhetoric that's going around on the one. So
We pushed back on the management sports in college level, so that, I think that passed as well.
yeah,
That was a good one. So,
yeah, another good one. Another common sense. I mean, it's common sense legislation that sometimes doesn't come out. Sometimes when you look at especially the evening news, and you were actually there, you're wondering where they were.
yeah.
So,
So next session, what do you think some of the things you could do better at, or what do you think the challenge next session, or for people here, like, reach out to the legislators and say, hey, you're gonna need to push them on this, or let them know how you feel about these issues that might come up next year.
Yeah, now's the time to get with your legislators. I mean, the work doesn't quit when session actually starts. So formulating legislation for next year is already started. Local government.
Letter in the mail from the assessor that said, hey, congratulations, your assessment went up, 30, 40, in some cases 50 or 60%. And now you will be governed at this much money. To me, I think what we have to really work at doing is keeping the assessed values under control. I would love to see if we're going to tax property. Again, I think it's not ethical to do that, but if we're going to do it, I would love to see you pay, the cap is 1% on your home of the assessed value. I would love to see that 1% be purchase price of your property. So if you buy the house for $1,000, you sign up, you sign the dotted line, I'm going to buy this house. I will commit to every year paying 1% of $200,000 to local governments. They can fund schools, roads, police, fire, all the things that need to be funded. And then when you sell it, if it goes up to $100,000 of value, when you sell it $300,000 to the next person, they now assume that. They say, we pay 1% on $300,000. Now we're not punishing you for creating wealth. I mean, with your house, your property is one of the best ways to build wealth. And I just get really frustrated with the government. It punishes people when they have good investments like the soul, and those investments begin to grow. We're taxing people on unrealized gains. I think that's a terrible idea. And it just de-incentivizes people to want to actually build the wealth of their future. What do you think about something like that? Not to be on the spot.
Put you on the spot, like to go ahead and put you on the spot. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the ideas. It's being discussed. What's really difficult now with the state house is to get 26 senators and 51 House members to agree, and then get the governor to sign it. So a lot around, and there is some good things that came out of Senate Bill 1 to keep the conversation going. We made the system worse. We made it more difficult instead of going the other way, instead of streamlining the system as far as that side of it goes. But we did put some guardrails on, what the local governments are going to be able to do as far as borrowing money and spending going forward. So that keeps local governments to the table to talk about property taxes for next year. I hope we get a fix in there. The fix really isn't what we got this session. So there's all kinds of different ideas around eliminating the assessor's office, going to a statewide assessment that's more streamlined and easier for the taxpayer to challenge. Would be a step. Eliminating property taxes for the 1% completely would be a big step. So there's all kinds of ideas.
About 1%, you're talking about the homeowners. So there's 1% cap, yeah.
So if we do that, then we've got to find funding source to bring back that revenue for the local government schools. And that's
right now, most local governments, about 80% of their funding typically comes from property taxes in most counties. usually the staff that I typically see. So you can't just, as much as I hate property taxes, you can't rip the rug out from underneath local government because it wouldn't be money on school roads, police fire. So we got to do it in a strategical way. I think that's the challenge, and everyone has a different idea.
Well, and you're in Delaware County. In Delaware County, I've already heard from, I've got at least 20 people that call my appraisal office wanting property tax appeal appraisals done. I usually advise them not to do that, but to go ahead and appeal their property taxes. There's a form available at the state, and if you need access to that, get a hold of my office, and we'll get that out to you too.
And one thing we're doing at the LG's office, we are putting it up publicly on a step-by-step way to appeal your assessed value at your local level too. So you can get a hold of Alexander's office, but we will actually put the information right on our website, right on our social media, so you'll be able to say, okay, I want to appeal this, it's ridiculous, and we'll make sure that you know exactly how to do it. Because a lot of people just don't know, and they just feel like they're stuck. And there's sometimes there are solutions to get that assessment reappraised.
Yeah, and in Delaware County, across the board experienced 20% increase, and some way more than others. I've talked to several, maybe some people even in the room here. So I'm having the state kind of take a look and see if Delaware County is an anomaly and if that can be reconsidered in some way at this point on those assessments. And then that kind of just brings back what we talked about. We've got 92 counties doing things 92 slightly different ways and coming up with different results, because we have some other counties that haven't experienced gains in assessment but are still working through that same system of assessing properties. And in their county, theirs didn't go up, but more counties did.
Yeah. It's some counties, SB1 is going to cut a lot of taxes because the lit tax is already the local income tax, the local option income tax. That was already above the threshold where it has to come down. So they're that come down, and they're going to see the property taxes come down. In some counties, other counties, they can see the opposite. So to your point, we have 92 different counties. It's not a one size fits all. That's why it's been so convoluted and complicated. It was not an easy thing. I do think we dropped the ball in SB1 quite a bit. So
Well, and looking at Delaware County and Randolph County, which is District 26, local governments, I think in almost all units of government, will actually see an increase in funding. Everybody says that there's a loss, but there's going to be. So if you budgeted last year, you're going to receive more money according to LSA projections next year than you did last year. So if you're able to make last year's budget, if you're a local government, you're able to make last year's budget, as long as you keep the belt tight, you should be fine. And there aren't now you won't be getting what you would have gotten had you done nothing. So there was some.
So we basically limited how much local government could grow, is what you said.
Yes,
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, that's good. That's a really complicated issue. Again, just keep on your reps, keep on your officials to tell them to fix it, continue to go back and take another bite of the apple. Why don't we do this? Why don't we open up questions and we'll jump into that. If you want to line up, Christy will have the microphone, and then you can tell us your name, where you're from, and then you can ask questions, whatever questions you want to ask. Don't cover. Yeah, cool. All right, no questions. Well, hey, you guys have a good night. Oh, there we go. All right. Here. All right. Yeah.
Okay, I know we talked a second ago.
Yeah.
My name is Garrett Conway. I live here in Delaware County on a horse ranch. I'm a sixth-generation Hoosier, child of a rural public school. My graduating class was 52 people. I am the former East Central Community Liaison for OPRA. That's an agency that Lieutenant Governor oversees. The day before your inauguration, I was in a pre-written resignation coming from an executive director that you had appointed, Fred Glenn. So I had to sign it, no other option, and I could immediately no longer be employed there. My question has to do with the staffing choices made at OPRA. All of the people coming in currently live in Hamilton County. Hamilton County was a county that I covered in my region. I know you're from Hamilton County. People that are taking these positions, some of them are bypassing standard hiring procedures. They are appointed into low-level bureaucratic positions like mine. In fact, the current East Central Community Liaison is a member of the Carmel City Council. I know that we've had issues in the past where elected officials cannot hold bureaucratic positions in state government. So my question is, all these people coming in from Hamilton County to the Rural Development Office, how does that support rural communities? And how do these people coming in, and friends, congregants, campaign supporters, viewers, how does that enforce and uplift the governor's executive order on merit-based hiring?
Yeah, well, everything we're doing is merit-based, so we're looking at everyone based on their merit and on their experience, what they're gonna bring to the table. So just because they know me or know the director, Frank Glenn, doesn't mean they don't have the merit. So we are looking at what skill set they're bringing. I believe the only person that I'm aware of is Teresa. You talked about Teresa Ayers. She's Hamilton County. She is the Central Indiana liaison. We hired someone from Northeast Indiana, from the Fort Wayne area. Yes, that's right. We've hired someone down in the Evansville area, so that's a new hire. Yep. So we've been, and then I want to say we got one other CL that was hired. Again, I stay out in the staff. I'll let Fred run the organization, and he's the director. I think he's doing a great job streamlining processes. We are tightening up that budget program. We're making sure that, hey, listen, we're gonna do more with less because everyone's being asked to do more with less. He is fighting for the Main program to keep that alive. I think that's a valuable program for small town rural communities. I'm a small town boy. I have a small town background. I love small town economic development. So I'm going to make sure that it is small town focused. Just because someone lives in Hamilton County doesn't mean that they're anti-small town. I live in Hamilton County. Quite frankly, I'd love to get out of Hamilton County. I think it's growing too much. I think it's losing small town feel. I think there's been a lot of big government type tactics that have been going on at the local government level in places in Hamilton County. I get really frustrated with that. So just because someone lives in Hamilton County doesn't mean that they do that job. So everything we're doing is looking at the merit of the person and not where they're from. I mean, that doesn't really play into the books as long as they're in that district as a CL. So they can live in Hamilton County, they can live in Madison County. We want to know if you do the job, and if you're going to have a work ethic for it. If somebody that's competent that that doesn't have to be micromanaged, and what experience are you bringing to the job? So in every administration, you're going to turn. I mean, every new administration has a right to bring in people that they believe are the right people for the job. So there's always a bureaucratic ebb and flow whenever new administrations come. That happens at the federal level, state level, local level, and the elected officials have the right to work with the people that they believe are going to do the best job, the ones they can trust. And it doesn't mean that there's any animosity towards the previous. I mean, I didn't know Duke very well, the former director, but I called him and I said, hey, Duke, seems like seems like a nice guy. Seems like he liked the job. I just I had to put somebody in there that I knew that I had a very good relationship with, that I could work with. So that's why I had to let Duke go. And it was never an easy conversation. He was great for him. I just let him know, say, hey, no hard feelings. I just got to bring the guy in that I trust, that I can do this. I think Fred's done a fantastic job. I think he's tightened up the organization. We're here for local communities, small community leaders around the state to say, hey, Okra is actually starting to work for us and not against us. And we're really excited. So that's the constant feedback I'm getting when it comes to Okra. Yeah.
In terms of like people who bring the desk to the region, I specifically had East Central, which is 16 counties at that point. In 2024, I brought in between $5 and $7 million more dollars than the next highest region in federal grants, and some state funded grants. I think we didn't have any state funded grants at that point to our office. All of that was in federal infrastructure grants, so fire stations, wastewater plants, that kind of thing. I brought in, like I said, between $5 and $7 million more dollars than the next highest. So it doesn't really add up to me that other people are more qualified, but I was the most qualified and had the best outputs of that team.
Sure. Well, it's going to be subjective. I mean, it sounds like you can argue, yeah, I did a good job. That's great, and thank you for serving. But again, there's a lot of other aspects that go into a hire. It's not just about the money that you bring in. It's about the culture. It's about the new director. It's about making sure that the team is clicking and working well together. There's a lot of things that are sort of non-tangibles that when it comes to building a team. And and again, the director has every right to staff it the way that he or she believes is going to be best. So it's not no hard feelings. This is my first time meeting you here, so I didn't know you, before tonight. But I would say, I gotta trust Fred to make those decisions. That's why I hired him to move the organization in a way that's going to represent what the future best. And I can tell you what I hear from the local officials say, hey, Okra is really starting to run well. And it's better than what it was. Not a youth thing, but under the previous director. They're saying, hey, this is running much better than the previous director was. So that's the feedback I get, and we have to be able to staff it the way that we believe is the best for users. As we've only got 4 years, we're willing to give 8 years, but that's not a big window, right? So we got to be able to do what we believe is best. And that does mean sometimes we got to allow certain people to go and hire new people, and those are never fun conversations, but you got to do what's best for the people in Indiana.
Those people being your friends or congregants or your campaign supporters.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Is that-
People that I trust, people that I know will work hard, people that will represent the values of current administration well. Absolutely. I'm going to put people around me that I know, that I trust, that I know will do the best possible job, in my opinion, for the people of Indiana. And I think every administration does that. You want to add that? You look at who's around the governor right now. It's his campaign supporters, it's his friends, his people from Jasper County. There's a lot of people from Jasper, Indiana, down in Boyce County. There's a lot of people around him. Why? Because he trusts them. He's worked with them before. They're business partners, the people that he's worked with for many years. Why does he bring them in? Because he knows they're talented. Look at the federal administration. President Trump brought people around him that he knows, and he's worked with, and trusts. Every administration does it. President Biden did it, and he can. So this is not something that's new. This is something that every administration has the right to do, and I'm certainly going to put people around me that I trust. Congregants, friends, allies, people that work in the campaign that I know I can trust.
At the expense of a real development specialist who provide more for this region than the other region.
Well, I have to look into that because I don't know what you provide. I mean, I hear what you're saying, but I think we're on a good track. I think Teresa's going to do a good job. I don't know what she's going to project out, but I think she's going to bring in a lot for the region too. So again, it's nothing personal, but we're going to put people around us that we can trust. And I told Frank, right, get the team that you need, right? Because we're not trying to make friends within the organization. We're trying to do the best for the people of Indiana. So I said, whatever you have to do, get in there and do it, and get this thing running like a well-oiled machine. And that's what he's doing. I really think it's working well for Indiana. So
I recommend you talk with you and ask about me.
sure. Okay, I mean, we're happy here. Yeah, hey, thank you for reflecting here.
Hi, I'm Jared Commerce from here in Delaware County, and I had the pleasure of meeting you in March at a faculty.
Oh yeah, and then typical.
Yeah. So that was excellent. My concern is I work a lot with DCS and the child welfare system. I had previously been involved with DCS years ago. My wife and I got saved out of addiction almost 8 years ago, and so the Lord changed our lives. And so now we just advocate for families making positive changes. And today I know that SB 143 got signed into law, the parental rights bill. So that's exciting, and very proud of that. Thankful for that. Also thankful for Senator Alexander. He's given me several opportunities to speak with him about issues and help my wife and I navigate learning how legislation works. So I appreciate your openness and talking with us. When I listen to the concerns on some of these bills that Senator Alexander was talking about at the beginning, that had to do with foster parents and DCS. The common concern is DCS. The issue is DCS and the reform that needs to be done with DCS. And so one thing that I'm focused on at the moment is parental rights. So we all want children to be safe, but also we want to not violate the parental rights. And so I think that's one thing that DCS has a bad track record of doing here in Indiana. And Texas recently passed a bill that is, for lack of a better word, like a criminal Miranda rights bill. So when DCS gets their information, they come and before the investigation begins, before they talk to the children, before they talk to the parents, they have to read the parents a list of their rights. These are not new rights that they created. These rights are already established in Texas law. They read them their rights, and then they also have them sign this paper saying that not only did I give these rights, but they were read to me by DCS. So I think that's something that, especially as a conservative state, that Indiana should have. And I wonder what your thoughts are on something like that.
Yeah, it's a great idea. That might be a policy change, even with Director Krupp. Great guy. We were just with him this morning here in Delaware County. We had a group of about 20 pastors. We did a roundtable, and we let pastors ask, like, hey, this is, these are issues in our community right now. One of the issues was DCS. So we brought Director Krupp with us. And we were talking about how, hey, the faith community work hand in glove with DCS because DCS is still equipped to take care of it. There are apparently 174 children right now, children in need of services outside the home, in Delaware County. There's only 64 homes to place those kids in Delaware County. That means over half are going to places like Marion County. Some are getting shipped down to Evansville, others to Fort Wayne. And so working with the churches and the faith communities, the synagogues, all of these faith or nonprofits even, say, hey, how can we build a bridge with government to connect the problem with the solution and not try to only be the solution? And so I'm very, very aware of this. He is changing the culture of DCS. He got the hardest job in government, bar none, without a doubt. But he's the right man for the job. I'm super excited. I think it's one of the best appointments the governor made is Adam Krupp from DCS. He knows how broken, people tell you it's a broken, messed up system. He's coming in, he's changing it. They've redone the vision statement, the mission statement, the culture is changing. So, hey, the job is not just to enforce state law. The job is to restore broken families, right? To see redemption happen in lives of many people, parents and children alike. How can you do this as DCS? I love the bill that was just signed today, reinforcing parental rights. I love Senator Alexander. You can hit on that too. What do you think? If that's possible, do parental rights and being that codified in the law.
Yeah, well, I think we've got okay, I think set up. We moved that back, so is it the 18th? Something like that. Yeah. Anyway, we're gonna get together. Probably. I think that's our topic of discussion. Okay. I'm supposed to take a look at it. We'll have to see that how that fits in. I'll tell you some of the most meaningful things that I believe I've done is on the Judiciary Committee, working with those, and it is a fine line. And I know my wife and I talk about this too. I mean, you can move up to that line and you can help people, and if you move across that line, you're hurt somebody else. So we've got a really good Judiciary Committee down there. I mean, about half attorneys and half not, and a lot of common sense on those committees, and we really try to make this work with on the parental rights side, on the foster family side, and the root of that problem has been DCS. From my first constituent meeting down there, thank goodness Senator Holman, John Ford, and David Long sat in on that meeting with me. This was a story about kind of the other side of things, was a foster family that was trying to save a kid. And unfortunately, they weren't able to do that. I won't go into details on that, but we found out the root of that problem really was the agency and the turnover of the agency, and people were getting left behind. If there would be a caseworker quit, nobody knows anything about the case file, all that, trying to get back up to speed and burning out and lots of stuff. So I'm really excited that we're addressing that state agency, along with some other state. I'm glad the governor and Lieutenant Governor taking the position that we need to. It's a long time coming in those agencies. So I think honestly, if we improve those agencies enough, we won't have to continue to pass legislation to try and correct the wrongs.
Yeah. I think one thing to discuss when we got the meeting is getting with Director Krupp and seeing if, Miranda rights of parents, he might be able to just issue a policy. This policy, way he's going to do with the bureaucratic machine and actually passing the law. And we could issue a policy and say, hey, when DCS workers come in, the policy is to read the parents their rights, right? Attorney General Rikita like to put out fosters parents' Bill of Rights. So that way they know he's been doing all this Bill of Rights, church Bill of Rights, foster parent Bill of Rights. He's got some other ones as well, but that would be a great place to start because Director Crump would probably do that very quickly. That's probably more of a director's decision, changing policy. Yeah.
With DCS is they don't follow their policies.
That's true.
And so, if they know the policies, so, and then how each county, interprets those policies or acts them out, and so while there's policies, there's not really any, teeth behind those policies.
Yeah, that's
There's not any enforcement.
Yeah, and again, the policies are just policies, and if they're not enforced, but again, I think you're gonna have Director Crump that's actually gonna be very good at that enforcement. Now, he's got 4,000 employees in DCS. Culture's pretty toxic, right? It's coming into this toxic culture. It takes time to change that culture. You can't just go in and say, we're gonna change now. You can get a mass exodus of people, 3,000 people could leave overnight. If he's not careful, he needs to almost grow them into being this healthy agency. And he'll tell you his dream is to work DCS out of the job. I mean, he really that's what he said. I want to see DCS be not needed in India. That would be right? It should always just be a safety net there as a last resort. He sees it that way. Working, and again, he is so faith forward. He's like, we've got to get faith to work together. And now so DCS for a number of years has been pretty hostile to the faith. They didn't say, hey, we don't want faith. And look what the result is, right? It's a failing, broken system. And so what Adam Trump's coming to he said, you know what, we tried everything else. It's not working. So we should probably go back and engage with faith communities because they have the heart, they have the resources, they have the compassion that the government doesn't have. And they could probably be the answer to the problem. So
well, I mean, you've got the opportunity to see how it works and how it doesn't work down there too. So I want you to listen to what he just said about getting that. So what we could do is already, number one, have it in place, but also have an advocate to codify that when we come back to session next time. So we got, and I need an advocate in DCS, like with Director Cross coming and say, hey, we are implementing this, and this is something that we want too. So you got to come at us from all sides sometimes to get us to get to finish life.
yeah, Director Trump comes in and he testified next year, or maybe on Senator Alexander's bill that would be the Miranda rights for parents. He said, not to put you on the spot, but if he comes in and says, hey, we've already do this. This is the policy, it's working well. The legislature can be like, all right, no great, that's good enough. And that's how you get involved in legislation. So great question. I was just on the phone when I pulled in here with a father of a adopted daughter from the foster care system, and nightmare experience, right? DCS treated poorly. DCS was doing, things back in 2019. It's been multiple years of just hell on earth with this family, right? And so it's heartbreaking, and it's infuriating, and it's very frustrating. But literally, as I was pulling in here, it was a 20-minute conversation with the father who was trying to do the right thing. They were just saying, we just want to help, right? That's what really takes me off. People jump into the foster parents or to help in DCS, and then they get totally taken advantage of or abused by the system itself. And so you have good, well-meaning people that say, yeah, I should have never done this in the first place because it's wrecked my life, right? I'm just trying to help. And it's wrecked this child's life too, which is even worse. And so we got to fix that. And that's what we're, and at the same time, you got to have discernment to know when to pull a kid out of a bad situation and bring justice down and really dead deep awful parents too, right? That are doing bad things. Kids. So it's just, there's a justice piece in this that we've got to really be stewarding too. And when somebody does something bad, kid, man, it boils my blood. I have very little patience for people who hurt kids, and I want justice from that part of people. So other people who might be thinking about doing that say, oh man, what happened to that person that did something bad to a child? I don't know if I want to do that, right? So it's a balance. So yeah, thank you. I appreciate your heart. Okay.
Hi, Cameron Grubbs, UNC Delaware County. So you were the Indiana Agriculture Secretary.
Yeah.
So you know most of this stuff, but with Indiana being, we make about 35 billion in agricultural products, we export about 7 billion, 6.5, I think, which makes Indiana the 7th largest in the United States. What would you say to those farmers that are concerned, even the tariffs, and not just the tariffs, but it's the kind of trade war and the chaos that are coming out of, this administration? What do you have to say to them? Because we've got, I think, about 92,000 farmers in Indiana, and so they're going to be concerned, especially with 90 days until I think the trade, the tariff.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, so like that comes around harvest time. So they're gonna be concerned with whether or not they're gonna ship stuff out.
Yeah, there's a lot of uncertainty right now, right? I would say what President Trump is doing is a needed thing. It's not an easy thing. It's painful, absolutely, but pain that we needed to get back on a fair, even playing field with some of our world leaders. China was taking advantage of our farmers without a doubt. They weren't playing fair. President Trump is using tariffs as a way to get them back into right alignment. 90 days, right? We're under that now. I think it's probably closer to 75 days. But I would just say, hold on. I think this is a negotiating tactic by President Trump. I don't think the part is to have major tariff wars going on for longer than it needs to. I think he's saying we need people to get to the table, and it's worked. I mean, it's worked with the UK, it's worked with the Middle East, and it's working with China. Even China said, okay, we'll bring down our tariffs. And so when I tell the farmer, say, hey, hold on, I don't think it's going to be this end of the world scenario that maybe some are fearing it's going to be. The same respect, I do think we need to push Congress to get the Farm Bill done. The Farm Bill has not been, it hasn't gotten done over the last 2 years now. And so that has a lot of help for farmers in Indiana, as well as around the nation. And so what I'm doing is, as Secretary of Agriculture, I'm pushing our members of Congress to say, get Congress to get that Farm Bill done and signed. They're trying. I know our members of Congress are very pro farming here in Indiana. It's just that you've got out there, it's not 100 people. You got 535 people in Congress that think they're all key. So so not an easy task. But I think that will happen, and I think that will help the Farm Bill. There'll be some subsidies for farmers as well. And then I think we got what we can do here in Indiana is take burden on the farmers. They jump through hoops of regulation, right? Which is ridiculous. It hurts their bottom line because they got to put more time and effort in lawyers, accountants, legalese, figuring that out. We can take some of that burden off of that kind of state regulatory process. I'm not saying to make it fair game for everyone. The regulations can be good and keep things in line, so we need to be wise about that. The other thing is property taxes, and I'm going to hit it again because right now our farmer, I was just talking to a farmer yesterday. He just paid $135,000 to his local assessor's office for the property taxes on his farm, right? And this guy is not, raking in the debt, right? This is not somebody that's like, oh, it's a major, farm, they can afford it. So this guy's like, he's trying to keep his farm alive. He's got kids that want to farm. They're looking at it and they're like, because you can barely stay afloat. And now you're paying $135,000 to your local assessor's office. When that could be used to reinvest in the farm, reinvest in the community, and this guy's a good guy. He can spend it in his local community. This guy lives down closer to Evansville, and so I think that's one way where we really got to we got to shout from the rooftops, and it would really help everybody in this group too. Would help all your legislators say, hey, farmers are hurting because of property taxes. They pay 2%, so homeowners are 1%. They pay 2% of the assessed value, and again, it's assessed value to be jacked up on farmland, just like in the housing. So I think a couple of those solutions, that's what I'm really, screaming from the rooftops that our state legislature and Congress need to do. And in the meantime, I'm going to go and, I'm listening to farmers every day and work. I was just with the meeting with the governor and Director of Ag yesterday talked about how we make farming more productive, more sustainable for Indiana farmers. And, we have about a $3 million budget for our state Department of Agriculture. That is the lowest by far of any state around. Illinois, for their perspective, now it's Illinois, I'm not saying Illinois is a model, legislative, but they had $217 million, what they put into their Department of Ag. And Tennessee just bumped up their Department of Ag budget by $100 million. Ohio has a $200 million agricultural budget. Iowa has a $19 million agricultural budget. Again, we are $3 million. Now, our director of ag was saying that's not all bad. We run on a very lean machine here in Indiana, which is a good thing. But the governor asked me, the director of ag, to figure out are there things we're missing that they're doing that we should be doing, because he's very open and saying we'll fight for more money for our farmers and through the Department of Ag if you can prove who we need, right? And that's so we're working on it and we're really fighting hard for our farmers.
Yes. Let me just say one thing on that. The farmers that we're dealing with in my district anyway, I'm not hearing a concern from them on the tariffs. Theirs are more towards grain prices and where the grain prices are at.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would
Related to the supply and demand on corn soybeans is the most prevalent. So I'm not hearing directly, but I do hear a little bit from them on property taxes. On property tax bill, we did a reduction, but it's probably not going to even reduce it to let the gain be. So they'll probably see
We do a both, but it was very small, and it wasn't even a both.
see, if I could follow up on what you said.
Yeah.
So something that's been going around here, Senator Alexander knows, I'm sure you've heard all about it with the solar coming around. And I'm all for solar. I want to make sure that it's done right. Do you feel like we're putting farmers in a predicament of, between taxes, between prices and income, because we know, nobody's farming to get rich. Does that put them in a position to where they can be exploited by?
Oh, without doubt. Yeah. I mean, that's how these wind and solar companies are coming in and say, hey, farmer A, you're not really making much off the land. We'll give you far more per acre, on a yearly basis. I mean, I don't blame these farmers for selling out to wind and solar. I don't like it, particularly that we're going to wind and solar all over the place, because one, I think we have to protect the farmland and save food, right? And I also think wind and solar is so unreliable. I'm good with renewables. I'm not against renewables, but we don't know what the technology will be in 10 to 15 years. We're basically, paving paradise for the parking lot, right? It's, like you build too, right? And I don't like that. And what's going to happen 15 years from now with this solar technology that may be outdated in 10 years? What's going to happen with this wind technology? Now, wind technology is a little better. You can still farm around it. It just looks so ugly, right? Like nobody get up in the morning and futuristic, Terminator, looking, stuff. Now we are working on like agrivoltaics, which is solar that is raised, so you can farm underneath the solar, so that you can still use the farm ground. There's technology that's kind of in that space, but I just am very concerned that we are destroying the farmland. And again, I'm not against renewables. I would say this: renewables. I asked the renewable companies, if the government didn't subsidize you, could you stand on your own? And it can't. Right? Don't say, well, not really, yeah, we're getting there night. Say, okay, well, that's a problem. And, we are subsidizing something that we don't even know what the long-term ramifications are. And I'm a little hesitant to destroy good, right? If this was like a blighted land, like, I think that's great. Like, let's put solar on blighted land. Like, it's not being used for anything. It looks nasty already. It'd be better to have that. Again, it's just not a cookie cutter. The big developments like to come in and be like, give me, 1,000 acres of land. So I can just pop it down and keep going on. Blighted land is a little bit more, you got to fit it to that land. So that's where I stand on it. And I don't blame farmers who get put in that position. They say it's either selling out to the solar and wind guys, or I may not even have a farm next year, right? That's a really hard position to be in. And I think if we do things on our end to limit taxes, limit regulations, make it as easy as possible to be a farmer in Indiana, that's the least we can do.
Well, that's talking with a farmer this morning, actually down at the State House, and they're every year, you know, you finish the harvest and it comes around the next year. We have a tough discussion with our farmer, the farms are around on, you know, he's looking over the next couple of years to break even with the amounts of money that they've got to pay for cash rent. And that's not a long lasting plan to break even, because it's a lot of work that they do. But what caught our eye this year is one of the large farms that I drove past twice a day is up for auction, and it's one of the biggest sales we've seen in the state, in the county. So over 500 acres up for auction. And for being a real estate appraiser, I'm very curious to see what that brings and where farm ground is, and we're going to find out in a month or so here where it's at.
I mean, that's assessment, right? Yeah.
So what we're seeing is, or what I think we may be starting to see, where we are. I mean, some of these farmers that are just hanging on and they're saying, okay, land prices are as high as they've ever been. I can't continue to do what I'm doing and make money. So is this the time that I cash in? And then who's that buyer? You know, is that buyer another farmer that's going to farm the ground? Is it a speculator speculating that maybe I could put a solar farm here and make a bunch of money at some point? Or is it that solar company coming in and saying, well, maybe I'll just buy all this ground, hoping that at some point in time. So I think we're, you know, maybe because of grain prices at a little bit of crossroads with farming throughout the state and the country, especially the Midwest. And but it's all the stuff that we have to deal with every day. I mean, it's constantly changing. I mean, the scenario changes. If it's not farming or solar or DCS or whatever it is, there's so many different avenues.
But you know, think about farmers. If we property taxes were based off the assessed value, boy, that would be a huge relief to them, right? It would be able to plan. They would know, okay, I bought this land for $1 million. It's going to be 2% on $1 million. Again, I'm not for property taxes, but even just making sure that every year I know I'm paying 2% on $1 million of what because you have to remember, assessed values, it's just somebody's perception of what it's worth. I can say I have a Mickey rookie card and it's worth $10 million. It's not worth $10 million. It's only paid $10 million. If someone only gives me $5,000 for it, well, then it's really only worth $5,000. So, but what we're doing is we're saying, you know, your farmland is worth this, now pay us that money. I think that's such a prone way to do it. And if somebody bought it for $1 million, it was really worth $1 million. So we're going to tax them on that every year, 2% on $1 million. And then that at least gives consistency for farmers to be able to know, hey, I know every year I'm planning for this. Now, like you said, if depending on how that farm sale goes, that farmland sale, it's going to affect farmland around it too. And so everyone's sitting back and going, oh, crap, like, you know, I hope this land doesn't go for, you know, above market price. That's screw me over. That should not happen. So I think it's things like that, man, that we could just fix that. That would help our farmers immensely, in my opinion. So
I don't think there's any kind of codified, when I tried to look it up, what the assessment value is, like the relationship to the market value and all those things, but even having them tied to the market value is fluctuating.
that's right. And again, it's just even market value here is still somebody's, it's just an opinion, right? Whether it's a formula or a machine mechanism that's doing it, it's still an opinion. I relate to this, and that's a great question, by the way. Appreciate it. But if you guys know the scriptures in the Bible, like one of the most hated people groups in Jesus' day in the Roman Empire, were the tax collectors. Because what the tax collectors could do, they could just, you had to pay taxes. Caesar said you got to pay taxes. So people would come to Rome to pay taxes. They'd find a tax collector. The tax collector would look at them. Whatever that tax collector said they were worth, that's what they had to pay. And here's the deal: the tax collector got more money if they could jack it up, because they got to keep whatever they didn't have to pay Caesar. So the tax collector had an incentive to make you worth more than what you actually were. And they were hated, and rightfully so, because they were screwing people up. And we're doing the exact same thing in this day and age through property taxes, in my opinion. And that's why people hate it so much, is because the government can come as a tax collector and say, Cameron, we think you're worth this much. And even I didn't put thing in my house this year, thing in my property this year. And you know what? That's how much we think you're worth, so pay up. And that's such a terrible way to do it because there will be people get screwed every which way. So I just added it to the.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure where to start here. I'm 76 years old. My name is Michael Shea, lifelong resident of Delaware County. Retired teacher, as I said. In my license, I have 6 different areas: political science, economics, and the histories. Taught for a long time. I've also been a truck driver in the past and a number of different things. Now, when you're talking, I still want to talk about passive manure as well. This state is just riddled with brownfields, as you know. We do not have to use farmland to generate that passive solar. We can use these brownfields, and if you come up with incentives for people to do it, they will. I go to the property tax. Look, I don't pay my property tax. I've always paid my property tax. However, I remember a time that when you took some of the things off of the property tax, all of a sudden we went from average homes being built over 100 today would be 120 to 150,000. This county, out around where I live, is riddled with $350,000 to $500,000 homes on 5 acres. The reason those people can afford that is, number one, they no longer have to pay as much for wages when people work for them. They also do not have to pay the property tax they would have before in the state, or they wouldn't have built a $500,000 home. And you don't have to have a $500,000 home to live comfortably. Another thing is that, like I said, I'm going to try. There's so much here to address. I mean, as I said, I'm 76. I've done a lot of different things. I've taught for a long time. I look at things, and I heard you mention about the tariffs. Are you kidding me? Are you seriously kidding me? I teach and taught economics. There has never been a tariff program, especially as one being proposed, that has ever worked, except for narrowly based. If I have somebody that's dumping steel below cost on my market, I do a tariff. But a general tariff is nothing more than a sales tax without telling people it's a sales tax. They're not, as well as I do, these other members are not paying those tariffs. We pay those. Another thing, I've been listening to the news today. The budget bill that's being proposed nationally. I saw how those things are coming down. This is nothing more than the fifth go around on supply side economics, which have never in the history of this country ever worked. The last time we had a tariff war like this, smooth hauling, like I said, I'm historic. This is absolutely ridiculous. Why can't we, as a state, be more progressive? You have, as I went through my career in education, the state continually cut budgets for the public schools, and then complained. They went to the public and complaining that they weren't getting the product that they were paying for because they weren't paying for it anymore. We have improved the salaries of teachers in the state, but we're still far in the way lower third of salaries of teachers in the state of Indiana. You're losing teachers every year. The year I retired out of my middle school alone, you lost 70 teachers because you were getting ready to sell our pension program, not you personally, but the state, selling our pension program to a third party. Well, where the state is administering it with my tax money. Now it's being administered by a third party that has to make money. So I was given the option of either retiring or seeing my retirement cut. And over a 3-year period, it would have gone to market value, which today would be a problem with retirement, as you know as well as I do. We are on the verge of doing the same thing we've done before. To do the same thing time and time again and expect a different result is the definition of insane. And it's like, who does this money go to? Do you know what the ratios here are on the money on this budget they're trying to pass? Are you familiar with that?
Are you talking about federal budget?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, a little bit. I mean, I'm not.
I don't understand. You're lieutenant.
Well, it's a state budget is what I deal with.
I understand, no.
But, so hold on a second, Mike, let me respond. Let me respond to what you're saying.
So Lieutenant Governor is not up on the federal budget.
I'm following it, but I don't know it like I know our state budget. I follow state budget. Now, so you're a Democrat, I assume, Mike, correct?
No, actually, I'm.
Okay. Well, here's what I'll say about this. So you said, why is the state not more progressive? We are a supermajority Republican state. I think it's a bad thing. Okay? I think it's a bad thing. I would love the Democrats to be more effective in winning elections because they will hold the Republican Party accountable to following the principles that they run on. The Republican Party, and I've been a critic of the Republican Party, I got kicked out of the Henderson County Republican Party because I called them out on their crap when they weren't following Republican principles. So you go back in 2020, I did that. The problem is the Democrat Party is so stupid. You guys push things like boys and girls sports, boys and girls bathrooms. You do some of the most nonsense, absolute nonsense things. It's what I'm saying, but you gotta put that aside. If you just get back to kitchen table issues and stop pushing stupidity, you'll actually start winning elections in Indiana. Now, let me ask a question. You said you don't need $1 million home to be comfortable. How much of a home do you need to be comfortable? You tell me. What is that number, Mike? What do you seem to know?
It'll be easier to do it in this way.
Okay.
In the 1970s, the minimum wage was $1.35 an hour. You could get married, you could go to school, college. You could eventually raise that up to where they're making like maybe $3 an hour. You could buy a home. The homes back then, the interest rates back then, if you're too young to remember, both of them are. In the 70s and 80s, the interest rate on a home in Delaware County was 12 to 14%. Today, it's dropped down to 3, now we're back up to 7.
Even kind of to 18.
I'm just saying, I'm just saying, the average home, both of my sons are certified pilots. Now, here's the deal. The average home throughout most of the history of this country has been on a basis of 1,700 to 2,100 square feet. I'm seeing homes built everywhere. There are 3,000 and 4,000, 5,000 square feet. And these people are complaining about it. Huh?
You bound hit me, you better. You hit me and I'll run suit again.
Okay.
Hey, but, so how much, answer the question, how much should someone spend on a home that's reasonable for comfortable living?
In today's market, probably $300,000 to $400,000.
300, 400,000. I don't know, that sounds like a greedy capitalist, that number, that seems pretty high. My house is less than that. I live pretty comfortable. Yeah,
That's
so,
all I'm talking.
so, hey, and let me tell you about this on the spending of public education. Our last budget was a $44 billion biannual budget. You know what we spent of that budget on education in Indiana? $22 billion. $22 billion. Oh, stop it. There's less than 10% of that. We spent $22 billion on education in Indiana. And we added another $7 billion of property tax money to go to schools. Well, we're spending almost $30 billion in education in Indiana. So let me ask the question, where's that money going? Because I don't think we pay our teachers enough. I don't think we pay our teachers enough. And I don't think we get the money into the classroom. Right? But we spent $30 billion with a B on education in Indiana. Where is the money going? So if you don't have we spend We spend plenty on education. The problem is it's not getting to where it needs to go. What I'm doing, what the governor's doing, we're getting through the bottlenecks of bloated administration. There are some small counties that have 4 or 5 school corporations. That's 5 superintendents. That's 5 administrative buildings. That's 5 different, football fields. All of these things are not going towards education. They're hurting our teachers. They're hurting our kids. Let's get the money back in the hands of the teachers. My mom was a public school teacher. My grandpa was a public school principal. I love the public school education system. It's not getting funded, but it's not because we're not putting money into it. It's because we've got bureaucratic nonsense happening at the local level.
Then go after that.
That's what we're doing.
Here's the thing. You have just changed the proportion of money in your last budget. It goes to vouchers as opposed to public schools. Here, well, listen to me.
And I'm going to spend vouchers all day long because isn't it fair, Mike? Let me ask you a question. Isn't it fair that the tax dollars of the parent follows that child or that parent to the school they want to go to? Isn't that fair?
It is.
You don't think it is?
No, because listen, here's how I'm telling you. When you have grandchildren, then when it's broken schools.
Yeah.
Even though their parents, one of them was a public school teacher.
Okay.
And their grandparents were public school teachers. However, that is a choice that is out there. Now, here's the thing.
You want to force people to do something with their money that they don't want to do.
Let me finish my statement.
Okay, well, you talk a lot, I'm giving you a lot of time. So,
If you improve the public schools and you make private schools go by the same rules that I have to go by, then maybe we can talk. However, my kids, they decided to send their kids to protest school, they paid. They knew they were going to pay. Here's the problem with the schools here. I mean, it's like, I go back, you ever remember, I started in kindergarten in Muncie. I graduated, I went to Ball State, I did other jobs, then I taught. So this is not really.
are you gonna put that guy in the face there? Yeah, yeah. Hey, Mike, okay, I get what you're saying. I appreciate the comments. I think public education is the priority, absolutely. But I also think in this system that we have, we gotta think outside the box. It's fair to the taxpayer dollar, follow the parent and the student to school they want. And you're gonna bring free market economics. We know the free market forces of competition benefit everybody. This is gonna make schools better across the state. It's gonna hold bad schools accountable. It's gonna promote good schools, public and non-public. And we're gonna see education flourish. We'll spend a crap ton of money on education in Indiana.
Go to your education fund.
Yeah.
Tell them to make the Brooklyn and private schools go by the same rules.
They have to follow the test.
No, they
Yeah.
don't.
I sent my child to a private school. They took vouchers for the first time this year. You know what they had to do? They had to pass the same test that the public schools were giving their kids so they could get the voucher.
What did they do with private schools? When people want to take their kids out of public schools and put them in another school or a program school, what happens to those students? 6 weeks in, they get, as soon as they do the date, as soon as they do the date.
They go back to public school, yes, and then, so all you gotta do is take money and put it back in the. We can change that. We can change that.
Let me say one thing. This issue was resolved in the last election. We had a former superintendent of public education that ran against the governor and lost it. When she ran on that platform. I mean, that was the platform. It was, trying to not put any more money. So that issue was resolved last.
And it wasn't close. It was kind of like, it was like,
The issue is the student, you know what I know. The thing that I'm saying, just you take the students who are underachieving and poor achievers, you take them out of the schools, you put them in the program schools. Once you hit that date for an enrollment, that money stays with them. They go back to the public schools, and the public schools
doesn't have the money.
they have to educate them, and they have to meet the problems.
That's an easy fix. I've already talked about that. All that you have to do is say, hey, listen, if you'll educate this child for the whole year of the school, then that money will go back to the public school and follow the child. It's an easy fix. So we're working on that. But hey, I appreciate you, Mike. Yes, thank you for. Yeah. But that's a good conversation, man. Thank you for coming up here. But, okay, all right, one thing.
That was a magnet school for special needs students. Every morning, we had 8 or 10 buses that pulled up to the school and let all these kids out. These kids were never going to pass a state test. These kids were never going to graduate from high school. But we had to give them the test because of state rules. Therefore, my school, and I did, my school failed township every year, on and out. But if you do a drill down and take that population out, my school would have gotten a lead.
Yep.
However, what do? You go to the public and say, look, well, these kids that just here, they can't happen. We applied for state waivers. State waivers did not come. Therefore, we were saddened with the title of failing schools, which we were not.
Yeah. And I think that's a valid point. Like, I think the testing is not applied fairly. It's not taking into consideration some of the life circumstances of some of the students. So very valid point. I'm all good with that. I've been pretty good with testing the way we do it for many years in public education. So I think that's a good point. Thank you for your comment like that. As long as you let the fair taxes follow the parents, you will agree to fairness is good, right? I love it. I'm just messing with you. Thank you.
My name is Julian Franklin. I'm the brother of Jackson Franklin, who's running for Congress in this district. I have a few questions. Not to put you on the spot, but I am. Do you believe in due process or habeas corpus for immigrants living in Indiana that may be detained by ICE?
Yeah, so the due process is, are you here legally? No, get out. That's due process. They have no constitutional rights.
So if they're legal immigrants that get detained, did you get to?
Yes, if they're legally, they actually, if they're not here legally, they do not have due process under the Constitution. Would you give the Japanese bomb Pearl Harbor due process rights when they were bombing Pearl Harbor?
How would you give whatever that they were? How would you do that?
How do you do that?
The process to prove that they were.
Yeah, so they're here. They're coming into our land. They invaded our sovereign land. And should we have stopped? Should we have said, hey, even though you're here illegally, we're going to put you through the court system? Japanese kamikaze fighters, that are bombing our ships right now. We want to protect you, and you want to make sure the constitutional rights you have there, or you just shoot them and send them home to block. So what do you do?
So how can you? I guess the point of the process is like, hey, are you a Japanese soldier? Are you actually here illegally, or are you not? So like, you and I can be here legally without due process.
So are you here legally? The answer is no. That was a due process. Now you gotta get out. That's how it is. It's pretty easy to prove that someone's here illegally. So yeah.
It's a citizen. Read the Constitution. A person. You need to read the Constitution.
So everybody has constitutional rights in the world?
Everybody has constitutional rights in this country.
You're saying so you get to be so Russia could invade Alaska, and we got to give Russia constitutional rights.
Read your Supreme Court.
Listen, the Supreme Court gets things wrong, just so you know. Supreme Court's not always right. Was the Supreme Court right in the Dred Scott decision? No, they weren't. They get things wrong. Supreme Court can have an opinion, but that's all it is an opinion. I'm telling you right now, due process for a legal person is, are you here legally? No, you're not. Get out of the country. Yeah, no, you're not. You're actually getting an opinion. But, right. You've already asked.
You had such a question.
Yeah. So I just want to point out, that's my second question. I guess the problem would be, it's like, you can't prove, like, if me and you were both American citizens, if ICE detains us, how are we going to prove that we're not illegal immigrants if we're just detained without question? So that's fine.
So, yeah, okay, so again, if you're here legally, you got to be sent.
How are we going to prove that you're here?
It's pretty easy to do that. You have driver's license, you have citizenship, you have a green card, you have a visa. A lot of ways to prove that you're here illegally or legally. So Yeah, things. I think you probably wasted some minutes, so, okay, go ahead.
So,
You like to ask questions? Yeah, definitely.
so do you believe in the separation of church and state? Where do you draw the line?
Well, separation of church and state is not found anywhere in the Constitution. So show me in the Constitution where it says that. I'll wait, it's not there, but here's what I'll say about that. Where's, you want to separate state from morality, right? So you can't separate state from morality. The question becomes, who gets to decide what's moral? Who gets to decide what is good, true, and virtuous? The founder said, there's a God, right? The creator, mentioned 4 times in the Declaration of Independence. This God, it was the Judeo-Christian God, so you know that they weren't talking about, some random God of some, far eastern religion. Judeo-Christian. This was the God that they said gave us our inalienable rights. Why would they should have this? So they did not believe in separation of church and state. That concept came from Thomas Jefferson when he wrote to the Danbury Connecticut Baptist Church Association in 1802, when the pastor said, "Hey, we believe that we're going to be persecuted if we preach what we want to preach." And President Jefferson said, "No, you're not. We're just part of Revolutionary War. We're not going to be England again." You know where Jefferson went that weekend? He went to church on Capitol Hill. The guy who wrote that famous line, "Separation of church and state," at church on Capitol Hill. Founders, the same guys who wrote the Constitution, also were part of writing the state constitution. Of the 13 constitutions of the 13 states, you had to make a public declaration of faith in Judeo-Christian principles for office. 9 of the 13 had declared faith in Jesus Christ. Why would those guys write about declaring a faith in Jesus Christ to be able to run for office? The same guys who wrote the Constitution, if there was really a separation of church and state. There's none. That's the point. You cannot separate the state from morality. Morality will come when from somebody, something, and it could be really bad morality, it could be immorality. Founders said, "Hey, there's a God. He's the standard of morality. He's the standard of good. If we want liberty to be protected for all people, we need to uphold His standard." And that's why I say there's not a separation of church and state.
So would you define yourself as a Christian nationalist, or like you want Sharia law for but a Christian?
No, not at all. No, not at all. So Christian nationalism is so important for taking out term. It means something you have 10 different people what it is, it'll give you 10 different answers. Let me tell you what I believe. I do not want to shove Christianity down anybody's throat. I don't want theocracy. I believe I'm a Christian. That's my identity. All right, I love Christ. And He's called me to steward the nation that He's given me. He's called me to love my neighbor as myself, right? So I believe Christian nationalism for me is loving Christ and then stewarding America as a good American citizen. I think every Christian in every nation should be a Christian nationalist in the sense that God's placed them in that nation. They're called to love their neighbor in that nation. Now, what's the opposite of nationalist? You don't know. It's a globalist. Should we be globalist? Yeah, certainly. I would say globalism is very bad because it destroys the sovereignty of our nation. So you take these terms of Christianity and nationalism, put them together, and say, "Oh, this is a bad thing." No, Christianity is a very good thing. We're founded in Judeo-Christian ethic. Nationalism is a very good thing because it keeps us sovereign from the world telling us what to do. We want sovereignty. So that's why I always push back on those terms when people say, "Oh, you're a Christian nationalist." I'm not going to let you work those words and make it out to be something bad because they're not. Both of them are very good. Our nation is great because of those two things, and that's why we need people like that.
So my other question would be, different comments from people who think that you and many others in the governor's cabinet are enriching themselves and their proxies with noted contracts, appointed positions, and luxury vehicles.
Yeah, well, I don't have a luxury vehicle, and I had a no bid contract with my lawyer, which I'm not going to put a bid out for lawyer. There's nothing legally I have to do that. It'd be like putting out a bid for a heart surgery. You need somebody that you can trust. You need somebody that you can go to. And by the way, we saved the state about $100,000 by, if we were to go with a typical Ice Miller or Warburg, by hiring a guy that I trust. So we actually saved the state a ton of money in my office by doing that. And that was the start. I was trying to lie like they typically do. It's the media writing something right line. So that's yeah.
You guys take pay raises this year? I genuinely don't know. They did.
Legislators did not.
And so we came in, and this is what we got. There was a pay raise that was put through this year. So I would say this. Let me say this. There was a pay raise to state executive officer 2 years ago. When I publicly, I knew I was and I publicly said that was done. They shouldn't have done that. I called my rep, I called my senator, I said, while Americans are suffering, you're giving pay raise to politicians. absolutely complete nonsense. They should have done it. And I was very public against that. And you can go back and find that. And I was wrong with Lieutenant Governor. I think, honestly, what politics today is way too much to do. So I would find money increase. Now, if you get put that three can, I'll be. That's it.
So, do you guys have a plan to find money in politics from large corporate interests, involved in state government, like Citizens United? How can we fight against like corruption or money in politics? You guys have a plan or I guess ideas about that?
I talked a lot. I'll turn this one over to you.
Repeat the question.
So do you guys have a plan or ideas on how to find money in politics or large corporate acts or large corporate interests involved in state government, or have an opinion on Citizens United?
I'm not sure what Citizens United is, so you have to brief me on that, but,
So we have like money in speech, so it allows super PACs to spend a limited amount of money on like re-election campaigns, for example.
okay, well, evidently they're not spending it on me.
So since United, I think how we've done campaign finance performance has been terrible. It's created more room for dark money to come in. I think money speech, sure, I get what the Supreme Court did in Citizens United, but then why can't I give you your brother who's running for Congress, right? So I can only give him $3,300, right? That's it. He can give himself $3 million. Why can't he express himself in free speech by giving himself $3 million? I can't do it, right? So I don't think it's fair. I think either he needs to only be able to give himself $3,300, and I should give him $3,300, and it's fair, or get rid of this and let me do whatever I want. And they were trying to limit the dark money that's coming in from the Bezos, the Zuckerberg, the Koch brothers, whoever you want to say, like buying elections, right? That was the point of Citizens United, was they were trying to stop, or I'm sorry, the campaign goal, right? They tried to stop that. Well, what they did is they created super PACs, abilities to be able to hide all this money. And now the Koch brothers, the Zuckerbergs, and whoever can give a ton of money. You never know who it went or came from. And then these super PACs can just start flooding money in. So we really screwed it up because we limited people's freedom, and I've always been against that. And here's something else I'd like to see. If I give your brother $3,300, it sounds like he's probably on the other side of the issue, so I probably won't. But if I did, yeah, right. Just if I gave him $3,300, I'm not going to get that back, right? If he gives himself $3 million, he can loan himself that money. He can win, he can buy the election, and then as he's the congressman, he can then take that campaign money that he continues to raise because now he's the guy, and so people want access. Hey, Congressman, here's a $3,000 check, right? Here's another $3,000 check. He can begin to pay himself back over time for that $3 million. And then that's how they get rich. So my proposal has always been, okay, fine, you can give yourself $3 million, do it like everybody else, but you cannot pay yourself back. That way, you got some skin in the game. And if you want to invest $3 million into your campaign, great, you're not getting it back.
Yeah, I would encourage you guys to look at the American Anti-Corruption Act presented by the Represent Us movement. They do the bipartisan work.
Does it kind of sound like what I'm saying, or
a little bit? It's an organization. Represent Us. I would encourage you guys to look at it. And the specific plan to the American Anti-Corruption Act.
yeah?
And then the next question I would have is, it takes an executive order or just a law from the state legislature to legalize cannabis, legalize weed. I know a lot of politicians are bought by Eli Lilly and Big Pharma, so they're not going to do it. But like, would you, like, if you're governor, you're at the governor's ear, would you legalize cannabis statewide?
No, but not because I'm bought by Lilly. I don't feel like that's the guy that's comes from Big Pharma, especially after COVID. So I'm not a fan of Big Pharma in any way, shape, or form. And never talked to anybody at Lilly. I've never had a conversation with the high at Lilly. And frankly, they probably don't want to have a conversation with me. So they're not going to here. But here's why I'm not against recreational legalization. Medical, different. If a doctor and you and your doctor want to decide like that's good, we prescribe way worse and more dangerous drugs than cannabis, right? But recreational, I've seen what it's done to states like Michigan. My brother-in-law is a state trooper in Michigan. They legalized recreational marijuana. It has literally begun to just chip away and erode. They said you're going to get more tax money. We'll build more schools. That was the promise. We'll build more schools with this tax money. we're losing so much tax dollars because we're losing all this money to Illinois, right? And, you know,
200 million. I believe it's Indiana. Indiana loses 200 million. Yeah.
okay, fine, yeah, okay, so the Army schools, Michigan built a part of that, legalized now for almost 10 years.
How much?
You don't, zero. Zero. This is the thing. The government always tells us this. When we said, well, let's legalize giveaways, but fix our roads. I don't know if there's no road, they fix our roads. Right? They do this all the time. They tell you, hey, oh my gosh, we're losing all this tax dollar. If we just do this, then we're going to be able to fix all our problems. It's a lie. It's not going to work. Stop doing that. And the problems that that's going to bring into addiction, it's a slippery slope, it's a gateway drug. Colorado, California, they're all starting to walk it back now. They're saying, oh crap, we really looked at genie out the bottle. It's hard to get it back in. So I'm glad we waited. I'm glad we've been able to see. Now, here's the deal. It would have been good for Colorado and Michigan. My brother-in-law, as state trooper, he says he sees more OWIs now than he did beforehand. Many times it's because people have been impaired through marijuana use, right? And
How does that compare with like alcohol?
oh, absolutely, I totally get it. It's a complete double standard.
You can't drink and drive, right?
I totally get you probably have the freedom. You're absolutely, listen, the libertarian in me is like, hey, let people be dumb, right? God gives people the freedom to be dumb. Government should give people the freedom to be dumb, right? But I also recognize that decent and orderly societies need some boundaries. I think alcohol has become a problem. I think people recognize it. How many people die every year? So does that mean we should just keep adding on top of it? No, I think we learn from that. Say, hey, yeah, we look at genie out of the bottle here. Let's not let the genie out of the bottle here, right? So that's why I stand on it. And so I like your opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think the other thing about marijuana is it goes against so much of the health policy that we're trying to go forward on. And that's a hindrance for me.
What's specific, what health policy?
All of our healthcare issues. You know, we've got smokers with lung issues. We've got, all of the stuff that we deal with on the healthcare side. On the law enforcement side, you know, it's going to put more stress on law enforcement dealing with marijuana sales. And we've already opened up the bottle just a little bit. And it's been really difficult to claw back. And I can't even imagine having legalized marijuana at this point and we decided we didn't want to do that. How difficult that would be to pull back. So I know that's where we're at now.
Yeah.
Just 0.03. What's that?
Hey, I want to ask you a question real fast. Sorry, sir. What do you do because it's federally crime? You know, so what do you do on that side? So if we legalize it from a state perspective, but it's still federal crime, you see that as being a problem.
Not necessarily just because so many other states have it, but it's like, the reverse point would be like, certain, like Indiana, for example, are looser in terms of gun laws. Let's say we had a Democratic president, how do you respond to like, loopholes of the right?
I'm not saying that you're right looking at that, but I'm saying, you're setting a precedent, right? You're saying, okay, fine, then Indiana, we can choose not to follow federal law, right? That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
So again, I'm all for states' rights. I think state rights are federal, nonsense all day long. But I don't hear that from a lot of leftists. Like you might over there, mumbling under his breath. I said that, right? I don't hear that from the left. They'll say, "Oh no, like the federal law, like you got to follow it." And President Biden, does something that you bet he was going to strip away our human rights. You would from the left saying, "Follow federal law," right?
Yeah.
So again, slippery slope, right?
Well, since like what 2015 was in Colorado, so like every administration, every governorship in sense, the DOJ could have prosecuted came into Colorado or all these legal states, they just had it. Because it's a can of worms, nobody else would get it. So
it's you're causing a big problem because you're basically setting a precedent. You're right. They're not prosecuting it. Not like the federal government coming in from Colorado and saying, "Lock them all up," right? They're looking the other way. The question I have to you is, should we look the other way on federal law? I don't think so. I think we should try to follow the law. Federal, and state, and local law, right? Like, it's just you're creating a really big problem because it's still legalized, or it's still illegal federally. So I think if you really want to have a conversation, you got to start there. And then bring it back, like we've done with abortion, bring it back to the states and give us the opportunity to really have this discussion. We're not there. So
I'll just leave off. Sorry about that.
Good question. These are great questions. I really appreciate it. I would encourage, like, hey, alcohol is legal and that's far more disastrous for people to ingest than marijuana. I'd be really curious on the health policy, because like, okay, then why don't we just repeal the 21st of it if we're so worried about health? I'd rather have personal freedom in that case. And so, and I also want to leave off, hey, fight more money in politics. We got to have stop the gerrymandering, which I think that people will do that. But
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, get Illinois to stop the gerrymandering, then we'll stop ours. So.
I'm just going to congratulate you on getting like 7 questions.
Yeah, these were good questions, but I want to say what were very good questions. So yeah.
My name is William Free, and I'm actually running for Congress for this district. Friends with Julian.
Okay. All right.
Nice to meet you. I'm not here as a politician.
Okay.
I'm actually here as a citizen. My kids graduated from Yorktown. My daughter actually graduates next Friday. And I do have a couple questions.
Sure.
If you don't mind. Yeah. We're living in a time when social media platforms are flooding our communities with disinformation, extremism, and content that harms kids' mental health. And yet, real reform is nowhere to be found. You and others in state leadership have focused heavily on banning books and policing pronouns, but where's the urgency when it comes to holding big tech accountable? What are you doing to protect Hoosier families from online manipulation, foreign propaganda, and algorithmic harm? Or are those threats not convenient enough yet to fit into your culture of warfare?
Mm-hmm. So, what have I called for banning books? You said I called for banning books. What have I done?
Saying the administration.
Oh, the administration. Okay. Okay. Well, I would never call for banning books, but I call it appropriate shelving of books, right? So I've been on the library board. I've always said, hey, move the books appropriately to be shelved. If it has adult content in it, then move it to the adult section, right? I'm not calling for banning books. I think that it can be very harmful. I think social media can be very harmful. I am absolutely in favor of making sure parents have mechanisms to control what the kids see and don't see in the palm of their hand. I think looking at policies in schools. When is the appropriate time to bring screen time into the classroom? I think that's a big problem. And I would be all for working with Secretary Janet to actually look at policies statewide that would say, hey, appropriate screen time is X, Y, Z. I'm not an expert on that, but I would be more than happy to facilitate that conversation. When it comes to propaganda, I'll go way back and assume you think I probably put out propaganda or misinformation. Well, some people do. But I would say, hey, what did Dr. Fauci do for 2 years? The federal government lied to us. They put out propaganda. They stopped the truth getting out. They went after people who were saying, we think this actually originated from a lab and not a wet market. People were fired from their jobs in the health community because they made those statements. Oh, hey, masks don't really work. Oh, people were crucified publicly because they made those statements. The vaccine might not be for everybody. Oh, you said that. CDC came down to the hardcore, right? Now we know all of those things were lies. All of those things, they didn't know what they were doing. They were pushing tons of nonsense into the culture. So I would say it goes both ways. I'm again, I don't think we should be peddling lies and we should be focusing on truth. But it's not just the social media platforms, it's our own government lying to us. And so I think we've got to work with private companies, and then we've got to hold the public agencies accountable. So it's work. They're private companies, right? You got to be careful. You can't, they have a right to say what they want to say, do what they want to do. It's their company. But when it becomes into that public health space, I'm all good with saying, hey, we're going to hold you accountable. Same thing goes with our agencies, CDC, NIH. Those are very appropriate conversations to be having. You get five of us, right? Just push bottomless information. And it's the reason Dr. Fauci got a pardon from the auto ban. But, believe it.
Well, I was going to say on the book issue with library, we have state and that's passed legislation to keep harmful books away from kids. And I think that was a really good move there, but it's only the books. So we went on last year and banned the cell phones in the classroom.
What age? Is that like
in high school? And I think my son could probably answer that. Use your phone in the classroom? You probably drive a lot.
Son, I'm in high school class. time. I work in higher education and actually to lots of classrooms. There are several high schools around the state of Indiana. The teachers have done a phenomenal job with having the students put them up in bins. Like, that's what they have to do. And it was a new concept to me going into the classrooms this year. And I grew up with that. I think it's great.
Can I ask a question? So you run for Congress.
Yes.
Okay, so hypothetically, you win in good Congress. What are you going to advocate for on the federal level? What would you like to see the states do when it comes to stopping unhealthy, things happening on screen time or misinformation?
So I have a unique perspective. I'm actually a victim of cyber harassment. I spent 4 years and I've developed AI software that now tracks disinformation. It's known as Shadow Hunter. It's not for sale. It's actually something that if I am elected to Congress, I'm giving it to the United States of America. What happened to me should not happen to anyone across the United States, ever. And I will wholeheartedly stand here today, whether I'm elected or not, and say, we need to give policing powers back to the state and not the federal government. Because when I asked for help, do you know what I got? I blind. Nothing. My social security number was posted on social media, on Twitter. Do you know how long I stayed up? 3 months. Pictures of my kids who are underage, or photos of my home. I was harassed, stalked, sent death threats. You know what I got from Hancock County, where I currently live? We can help you.
What was the reason?
That falls under federal jurisdiction. That needs to stop. That is one of my biggest pillars of my platform. And that's what I want to see.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's it's unfortunate. Sorry you had to go through that. I've dealt with the same thing. Right? Yeah, and so it's not fun. It's certainly inappropriate. It's wrong. You need to stop doing that. I think the policing powers to the state, absolutely. I've called for stronger policing powers to the state, less authority to the Fed, because they used it. I would be careful though to give your app, your program, is it an app or is it okay, so if you give your system to the government, again, those agencies lie to the government lies. So what's to say the government will use that against us, the people? Yeah. So I think one of the worst things I think we did in the last 25 years is right? It came right after 9/11. And listen, all American Congress, we need this. We need to be able to surveil these terrorists, right? What does the government help with that? They used it. They go after our own citizens. Our founders would have never been okay with that. I think the FBI, our founders, wouldn't have been okay with it. There's a federal police force. It was never supposed to be the federal government's job. If I had my way, I would strip every FBI agent of their duty weapon and say you're only able to investigate. And if you want to carry out an arrest, you got to go through the local sheriff. Because the sheriff is what who has the constitutional authority to strip somebody of their liberties. Because guess what? They answer to the people, and the Constitution's been elected. We didn't get to elect James Comey, right? We don't know these FBI bureaucrats. And so the founders would have been so appalled with how much authority we've given the federal government to come into our local communities in our state to arrest people the shadow of night. I mean, after January 6th, and we can agree or disagree on what that was. We get the federal government kicking in doors of little old ladies, homes of little old ladies, taking them out. Well, I know personal stories, stripping people of their constitutional rights, and there's a due process. We talked about the process earlier. The constitutional rights for citizens of this nation. Our founders have never been okay with that. So I'm just very careful if you give that point. I appreciate your heart. I know you're trying to do the right thing. I was just saying, I would trust the federal government further than I could trust the federal government.
Part of my creating an agency that actually oversees all of that. And it's social media has become almost like an infrastructure. It's like water, power. And it's one of those things that nobody uses. So it should be regulated.
Yeah, I disagree with you a little bit on that. I mean, I think water you need, social media, no. I mean, people use it, like, yeah, I mean, again, I think I could live 40 days without social media, 40 days without water, so.
Well, I see my best advice on social media is turn it off.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, thanks so much. Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, great question.
So I found what you said on, the separation of church state interesting. So that does never show up in the Constitution, right? But within the First Amendment, there's this thing called the Establishment Clause, which does back say that the government cannot establish any religion.
Who does it? What does it say that, who cannot establish?
Congress.
Congress. Congress. Whoa, is the state legislature Congress?
Yeah.
It's not. And again, I'm telling you, because this is very important. This is very important because what was Congress, what were they trying to stop? You had Maryland that was very Catholic. You had Virginia that was very Episcopalian. You had Pennsylvania with the Quakers. You had in the Baptists. They were all fighting each other on theology of the Christian faith. Founders didn't want that. That's why they said, hey, we're not going to establish a national church. It was never, hey, we want to make sure that Hinduism or Islam or Satanism or atheism are brought into the moral fabric of our nation. That's not what they were doing. I'm just telling you the history of this. This is not what it was about. They said, hey, we don't want a national denomination. But that's again why I brought up the 13th state constitution. You can't read the federal constitution without going to the state constitution to get a holistic viewpoint of saying. And the state constitution said, hey, you have to make a declaration of faith in the Judeo-Christian ethic in order to run for office. Again, same guys who wrote the Establishment Clause were part of writing the state constitution. So they would have never said the Establishment Clause the way that you're interpreting it if they put that in the state constitution. It would have violated the Establishment Clause from day one if they wrote that in the state constitution. So why did they do that? They did it because they wanted people to have the moral center of the Judeo-Christian ethic. That's the way they believe liberty is all protected. John Adams said this. He said, our Constitution is wholly inadequate except for a religious and moral people. He was saying, you got to be religious. You got to have a faith in a higher power, and that higher power is the God of the Christian ethic, because he's the one who gave some liberties, and it's only government's job to secure those liberties. So again, Congress shall make no law established respecting the establishment of the religion. It doesn't say the states, it doesn't say local governments, it doesn't say anything. It says, and they want the denomination battles out of it, but it was never intended to keep Christianity out of the moral ethic in the center of our governments. And it's worked really well for 250 years. And that's not to say that people who are non-Christians don't have the right to worship. No, you have the right to worship however you want to. But if you remove the foundations of the Judeo-Christian ethic, you will see this house of liberty crumble, and then nobody will have it. And that's what we're trying to protect here. Again, I respect my Hindu friends. I respect my Islam friends. I respect my atheist friends. They can worship however they want. But when they want to come in and say, well, we want our faith. When an atheist comes into the state house and says, I want my faith to be the center of the state house. And they do this all the time. They say, get rid of religion. Oh, well, you can't get rid of religion. You're just taking Christianity out and putting the faith of atheism in, because atheism is a faith.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
It's a lack of belief in a God.
It's a belief. It's a belief that there is no God.
That's not belief.
That's a belief. You have something.
Sufficient.
You can't have a lack of belief. Really,
It's six.
you can't have a lack of belief. You believe something. Atheism is a belief about something, right? The founders believe something. Now, I'm not saying that you have a right, like we have a right to disrespect your belief. If you're an atheist, hey, God bless you, right? I will respect your right to do that, right? But you can't come in and say, hey, we are now removing 250 years of precedent of liberty being rooted in Judeo-Christian principles, and we're going to replace it with the faith of atheism. Like that, we're not going to let that happen.
Why do you think a God is required to make a law? Why do you think God has to be the center of legislation?
Because every legislation starts with somebody's idea of good. So if there is no God, who gets to decide what is good?
The society.
Okay,
So the founding principles.
so the collective, like all of us.
Yes, we believe is best.
So in 1935 in Germany, the collective decided that it was good to put Adolf Hitler in power and then to put Jews in concentration camps. The collective decided that 6 million Jews being exterminated was a good thing. What would you say to that?
Adolf Hitler wasn't elected, he was appointed chancellor by the president.
Yeah, okay, but the people went along with that. The collective went along with that, did they not?
Okay.
Okay, so it was that good? They thought it was good.
Yes.
They thought it was good. Were they wrong?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay, so just an opinion. So good is just somebody's opinion.
Yes, but that's how.
So now here's somebody's opinion. So now here's what you just said. Here's somebody's opinion. So those in power get to decide what is good. So now Donald Trump, being president, gets to decide what's good. What Donald Trump decide what's good? I know.
Well, so
You want Nancy Pelosi to decide what's good? Not capable. Not capable.
politics are individual selections of beliefs.
Yeah, politics are individuals' questions.
Beliefs that someone decides their political beliefs.
Policies that decide what is the moral good of the society.
Yeah. So everyone's the beliefs on what is good is going to be different. We're obviously always going to disagree on that. But I don't think that necessarily we have a founding focused on different religious principles to make law. I think
Murder is good.
No.
Why?
Because I think robbing someone of life is wrong.
Are we, but let me ask a question, do you believe in evolution? Is that what we're like? Okay, so the animal kingdom murders all the time.
Yeah.
So why shouldn't we just murder? If someone thinks it's good to murder, you can take his car, why are they not there?
Because we've evolved a higher level of consciousness.
So
We are sapiens.
enlightenment. We've been more enlightened.
So there's two different terms I think relevant here. So there's sapiens and sapiens. We are sapient creatures.
Okay.
Sapiens is like kind of an idea of being able to understand each other. It deals with empathy, sympathy, emotions. We actually can understand what someone else feels like, and that is what makes things like murder, theft, and other things wrong.
These dogs not have empathy? The dog's not experience emotion?
Not
The same dog. He's very emotional.
sentient, not sapient. It's a different level of understanding. Sapience is what allowed us to build civilization.
Okay, so there were two revolutions going on during the American Revolution. You had the American Revolution, you had the French Revolution about the same time. The French Revolution lasted just over a decade and crumbled. There's a political philosopher, his name was Alexis de Tocqueville, who wrote a book called Democracy in America. He came to America in the 1830s and he said, I want to see why the American Revolution produced a constitution that actually is surviving and producing liberty and is actually working for the nation. Because ours did not work. And he came to America and he wrote this amazing book and he studied American politics. And he said, not until I walked into the churches of America and heard her pulpits aflame with righteousness did I recognize the greatness of America. He said, America is great because America is good. America never ceases to be good. America ceases to be great. He said, America's power is because we recognize good comes from a moral lawgiver. And moral lawgiver is the God of heaven and Judeo-Christian ethic. That's why when you go to Washington, etched in stone above the Supreme Court, you will see a man holding two tablets. That man is Moses. And why is that important? Because Moses was given the moral law, the code of how to live with one another in society by God himself in the Old Testament. When the speaker is standing up at the dais in Washington, and you have lawgivers from all around world history, etched in stone, the profiles of you have Montesquieu, you have Plato, you have Aristotle. There's one profile that's a full-face profile looking right back at the speaker. The speaker's the only one who can see it in the whole room. You know who it is? Moses. Why? Because we believe there's a God of the Judeo-Christian ethic that says this is good and this is right, and no one of us are him. Therefore, let's follow his ways because that will protect us. That will give us laws that actually benefit the society as a whole. And that's what our nation is founded on. And I'm not backing down from that. And if we maintain that course, we will be a blessed nation. We will be a good nation. We will be a prosperous nation. But if you remove that and you remove it with your faith of atheism, anything goes. Anarchy becomes it becomes king. And those in power rule, and those who are not in power, well, you're going to get trampled out. We see it time and time again throughout world history. How do I know this? 20th century, what murdered more innocent people than any other faith in world history in 1 century? It was atheism under the guise of communism. Communism is an anti-God political movement, and it's based in atheism. And they murdered hundreds of millions of people under Stalin, under Mao. We've seen this time and time again throughout world history. Tell me, man, Judeo-Christian principles are what made America great. It doesn't mean that I disrespect them. It just means that we cannot move forward. Yeah.
So, on average, the numbers for dollars that go from public student to public schools are around $2,500. For Indiana, it's 1900. And about 42% of public school funding on average in the nation is paid by property taxes. We're paying property taxes and we're not raising public student dollars and we're already under that average. What would you propose to raise that average so we're spending as much on every single student as we do, as other states do on average?
Do you have a data?
Okay, I'm not sure that I heard your numbers right, and if I did, they may be inaccurate, but we spend almost, on just K through 12, 50% of the budget. So I guess my question back to you is, how much do you want to spend? So all the money that comes into the state, 50% of that goes back to K through 12.
So we're talking about 43% of postal funding comes from property taxes. I think we're cut, right? And how much we spend per student in public schools is already under what we're spending for other states spend per public student on average, roughly. That's the general theme that is generally dropping in the state. I think that cutting public school funding is not a great idea. What was it? Senate Bill 518 is trying to take away money from ITX, about 50%. It did not get through to the House. I think that we're really trying to sabotage a lot of school funding, especially with Senate Bill 518 that was taking away money for students, public schools, but some number of students going to private schools in that district, and was going away to 50% of the school funding being taken away from them. And I think that if we really want to push education forward in the state, especially with having big colleges and higher problems with running where educated students leave the state, we should probably try to focus more on paying more funding into our schools. How much exactly? I'm not able to say budget. I don't think cutting is a good idea.
Well, I think that's my point. We keep dumping money in the K through 12. I'm going to put K through 12 to everybody across the board. Competition has been good. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's a fact. Competition has been good for schools and having other programs that we're seeing throughout the state that are either publicly or privately or a combination of both funded that are working throughout the state of these workforce programs are working. About 53% of our kids that graduate from K through 12 go to secondary education. So that means the rest of them need something else, need another direction. If we can get those kids, which we are. Matter of fact, some of the Union City schools over in Randolph County is actually starting in kindergarten to start moving kids towards their interests in what they. So they're starting out with kindergarten. They've got programs all the way up through 12th grade out there to get kids started on a path quicker, so that they, as soon as they get out of school, they're ready to go to work. They're not getting to 12th grade, walking out the door and say, gee, what do I do now? And then they end up maybe in jail. So, I mean, the funding formula is there. The money's there for public education. What is not is we're not getting the performance that we should be getting out of the money that we're spending. And as far as the school budgets go, I mean, I don't know how you would invest more than we are investing in 50% of the state funds that we allot for state 12.
And I would add to that, again, the money's there, it's just not getting where it needs to go. And that's just, we got to do the work of cutting through the bottlenecks, making sure that we're being efficient with the spending, because I don't think teachers make what they should make. I think teachers do a great job. And I think we should pay them, right? But we, to his point, 50% of the budget is already going to education. And when we get the return on investment as poorly as we're getting it, we got to look at it. It's not the money issue, it's the how we're spending it, where it's going. And I think it's totally about concern. Like, we want to make sure students have the money necessary so they can be educated. Oh, absolutely. Abraham Lincoln said the philosophy of the classroom in one generation is the philosophy of the government in the next. So it's the future. It's future America. So I totally agree with that. Hey, many great questions. Appreciate the thoughtful, but hey, we got probably 10 more minutes and then 8 more minutes. It's 8 o'clock. I can't believe it's been 2 years. Yeah, it's not fast for me. I'm sorry, you guys have sit 2 hours. Okay, last question, William. Yes.
I do have one other question. Talking about religion.
Yeah.
I'm running as a Democrat, but I'm running with bipartisan.
Yeah.
And I learned a long time ago, thankfully, to late grant former grandfather-in-law, Otis Bowen. Some more folks to get. Doc Bowen was he's my former grandfather-in-law. He's my ex-wife's
Okay.
grandpa, and I was really fortunate while I was married to her to get to sit with him and Carol and ask a lot of questions. You know, how some of the older folks that knew Doc, he was loved by all parties.
Yeah.
Democrats and Republicans. I asked him how he did it. And it was just the simplest words. Or he listened. I go back. I know my wife for gentle and I go back home.
What's going to be on balance? People know.
It's William Corey. It was an argument that lasted a solid month with me and my mother. So yeah, we just leave both. So it's like I get in trouble anytime someone wants to say my name now. But my friends are going to call me Corey. Doc told me, he was like, I listened to more than I spoke. And I want to ask with that in mind, Bibles in schools. What do you think?
I think you should put the Ten Commandments back in school. Here's why. Because it's part of our founding history. Ten Commandments are the moral code that built our judicial system, our laws. Our laws are based on the Deuteronomy code that God gave to Moses. And so I think it's important for our students to understand that, as well as the Declaration of Independence and as well as the Constitution. So those are the three founding documents that have made our nation. It's important for students to know that. When it comes to religious education, there already is a federal law in the books, 1952 federal law, that says that if a community wants it, there's got to be 3 churches and 50 community members have to sign a petition, then by law, schools have to give 1 hour of religious education a week to the school. And it's done off campus, right? So you move bus kids to a church or a school or some nonprofit organization. They can do that. I'm going to tell you the founder. So Benjamin Rush said the Bible should be the center of public education. The Northwest Ordinance, again, which was guys who wrote the Constitution, they said three things we needed in our public education system as we expand westward was religion needs to be taught, morality needs to be taught, and knowledge needs to be taught. Okay, religion was first. We got rid of that in 1962, right? And morality went out the window. Now we have fights, we have murders, we have teen pregnancies, drug use, addiction, suicide, all this crap. Well, why? Because of religion. And now we can't even teach. If you talk to teachers, they're like, I feel like I'm in a prison ward half the time. Well, it's because our founder said, teach religion, teach morality, and then knowledge. And again, we took all the bottom layer of house of cards out, and everything's now crumbling. People are saying, what do we do? What's going on? And again, I'm not saying we force religion down people's throats, but why is it good to teach the Judeo-Christian ethic? It's because that ethic is the pillar of our society that teaches to love your neighbor as yourself. Don't murder, don't lie, don't covet your neighbor's things, don't bear false witness. I mean, that's the principle of our judicial system, right? Don't bear false witness, don't perjure yourself, right? We don't teach kids this anymore. And now morality is subjective. So one kid might think, well, it's okay to murder. And boy, I hope somebody gets a hold of him, but may not, because we don't teach that. And I would say this too about Doc Bowen. I think Doc Bowen being a Democrat is a very different thing today than it is today. The Democrat Party believes that boys. Was he Republican? Okay. So let me make a point. So the Democrat Party. Okay, if you want to say, hey, he's bipartisan, he's able to listen to Democrats, right? Okay. I don't think Doc, regardless of Republican or Democrat, would have agreed that boys can be girls and girls can be boys.
I'm not going to wait on that.
Come on, you think that was actually?
You're going to have to. You're running for Congress.
That's right. So I mean,
I'll give you all the sound bite.
So
We're not going to have that.
But Corey, here's the deal. See, it's not reason. You can't have that conversation.
No, you can't.
So what's the answer? Can boys be girls? Can girls be boys? That's what the Democrat Party's pushing.
I think you're very good at redirecting questions, so I commend you on that. And that's a great conversation to have, but it's not the conversation that we're having.
Okay, but I think
It's back to the Bible, though. I'll ask you this.
Yeah.
I'm not going to disagree. I actually think that the Bible in schools is good, but I also think that the Torah and the Quran and all the other major religions should be taught. What's taught in the Bible, the Christian Bible, do you think that's taught in other religions too?
I think there's some context, yeah,
I do too. And I went to a Catholic school.
was the Quran the founding of the American Republic? Was that, no, what was? Yeah, exactly. So, again, this is America, okay? This is
One of the areas not to find.
absolutely, it absolutely is.
But you could have made the amazing conversations that our children could have with us at adults
Absolutely.
if they learned the Bible, if they learned the Quran, the Torah as history. It's not taught to them as one secular way of life. Let them choose.
Yeah, so, again, I'm not saying you don't teach world religion. But what I'm saying is you give special credence to the Bible because it is the pinnacle of the American Republic, right?
Right.
And I'll tell you, yeah, you disagree with that, that's fine.
We disagree, but that's kind of the point. How would you, as a Republican, and let's say I make it to Congress, and I'm blessed and I get voted into Congress, or Julie, Jackson, Julie's brother, gets in, and this is something that's discussed. You've gotten so good at putting party before our neighbor.
I don't disagree.
What point do we start being Hoosiers again?
Yeah.
And working together? Whether I'm a Democrat, whether I'm gay, whether I'm a Republican, we can, it's a wonderful country that we live in, that we can sit and have this conversation, and then we can get a Coke. Afterwards, right? What are you doing to get back to that?
Well, I'm doing stuff like this. I mean, like, listen, yeah.
We do it every day in the United States Senate. We work with the Democrats on their side and keep them informed, and we're friends afterwards. So, I mean, there's arguments on the floor. The media does their spin.
I actually really like the Democrats. I like the Democrats.
I was going to say, Greg Taylor.
One of your guys is one of my friends.
Yeah, Greg Taylor was one when I was on the Judiciary Committee, and he watched me a few meetings. And he supported my competitor. And he stopped me as we walked out of the room and he said, "You really care about what you're doing." I said, "I really appreciate that." And I remember that to this point. He's been a guy that was their majority leader until this last session, but just, he's a good, bottom line, he's a good guy, I mean, Aaron Freeman and he spar a lot on the Judiciary Committee, but Aaron has a get together for the LA's towards the end of the session, and Greg Taylor shows up over there and they have fun together. So I mean, it's not what you see on TV. I'll tell you that, not believing it, it's not.
No, here's what I'll say. This is the ask that I make to anybody getting engaged in politics: is don't make your identity your politics. Right. Like, and that's what I see. A lot of people go south there because then when I question or come against your politics, and you have every right to come against mine, that's why I do these town halls, right? Like, I like it when people come against mine. I don't take it personally because the politics are my identity, right? I'm the first child of God. I'm a husband. I'm a father. I'm a Hoosier, right? Like, that's my identity, right? And so my politics are just what I believe, and I want you to be able to push back on me because if I can't defend what I believe, then you don't know well enough or I'm wrong. And both are good, so I think, but what happens in politics is we make it our identity. So when someone comes against your politics, like, oh my gosh, hey, who I am. No, I just don't believe you. You're right. Doesn't mean I hate you. I'll go buy a Coke with you afterwards, and I'll give you a shirt when I right, if I need to, right? And so I think that's what we have to do is think about this, or the two things that we're told never to talk about, like our generation, politics and religion. And so we're kind of like 5-year-olds, right? Like when we now are forced to confront it, what happens when a 5-year-old is forced to confront something that it doesn't have the emotional maturity to deal with? Goes to temper tantrum, right? And so, well, why is that happening in America? Because we were never trained on how to deal with the two most important issues that have shaped society since the beginning of time: politics and religion, right? And so that's what it is, right? That's why I appreciate you coming out. I appreciate everybody coming out. I think this is where we start to get back to that. So thank you, Corey. Good luck in the race. Thank you. And so, hey guys, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to Pastor Bruce. Is he still here? All sleep? Okay, there's. Why don't you, maybe pray us out and, we'll, yeah, I'll stick around, maybe we'll listen, take it in, say hi. Hey, give it up for a second round. I put it on the top. Thank you for being with us. Yeah, that's right.
Well, want to thank our Lieutenant Governor for coming, to our church and doing this. I want you to know that as a church with no political states, that's not why we did this. We did this because we believe in a democratic way to do things and to let people in our community have this opportunity. And so, and I just want to say, I appreciate your heart tonight. Y'all were awesome. Yeah. I'm not gonna lie, I had people in my church freaking out. They're gonna be burning lights down, they're gonna be screaming. I'm like,
Thank you, sir. Stay there. Stay there.
but it should prove one thing to me, that we can have these conversations and walk away and still be cool. And so thank you for that. And let me pray out, and I want to pray for our brother, and specifically, Father, you are an awesome God, worthy of all glory, praise, and honor. I thank you for those that were here tonight. I'm thankful for their passion. And even though we may not always agree, here's what we do believe. What we want is what's best for our community, for our state, and even our nation. I pray for our Lieutenant Governor. Just met him. Cool dude. I like him. So I'm asking, Father, that you would place your hands upon him, guide him as you would, I can protect him, and that he would get great wisdom from those that spoke tonight, that may have given him ideas, that may have given him great insight into how those still working on thinking and what we want to see out. And so I pray that you be with my family tonight as they leave. God, keep them safe, protect them. And bring them back to Town Hill someday so they can hear some good preaching. For that, I do thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.